Okay, let's talk about the fourth and fifth President of the United States. Quickly, we're going to talk about number 4, which was James Madison. When James Madison was president, we fought the War of 1812, and we also just were starting the era of good feelings as James Madison was leaving office. The two things that James Madison is best known for are, one, he's known as the father of the Constitution because of his extensive work on the U.S. Constitution, and he is known for the court case Marbury versus Madison, which established judicial review. Okay, the fifth President of the United States was James Monroe, and he was a Democratic Republican. During his presidency, we finished out the era of good feelings. We had 2 landmark Supreme Court cases. We set national boundaries. We had the Missouri Compromise and the Monroe Doctrine. So his presidency was filled with many important American issues. The 2 Supreme Court cases that Monroe dealt with as President of the United States were, number 1, McCulloch versus Maryland. And this was an issue where the state of Maryland wanted to tax a national bank within its state. It went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court under John Marshall ruled that the states could not tax national entities and ruled on the side of the federal court. The second court case was Gibbons versus Ogden, and this was an issue over interstate commerce, which is trade between 2 states, 2 or more states, and who controlled that. Was it the federal government or the state government? And so, again, it was ruled on the side of the national government. The key thing to remember about these 2 court cases is that both of these court cases ruled in favor of the federal government, giving the federal government a lot of strength under these 2 court cases. Both ruled by John Marshall, who was the Chief Justice at that time. Okay, the national boundaries that were set while Monroe was president were the Canadian-U.S. border and the gaining of Spanish Florida. The Convention of 1818 set the boundary between the U.S. and Canada at the 49th parallel, which is this line right up here. You'll see that divides this part of, or that separates this part of the United States from Canada. The Adams-O'Neese Treaty, which was not John Adams, but his son John Quincy Adams, and the Adams-O'Neese Treaty of 1819 is when Spain gave Florida to the U.S. So in 1819, under a Florida Treaty, we gained Florida. So while Monroe was president, we set this boundary and gained this land. So at this point in American history, we've got 13 colonies, the land gained from the American Revolution, the Louisiana Purchase, this little chunk of land here from the Convention of 1818, and the Spanish Florida in 1819. Okay, one big issue that Monroe faced while he was president was the issue of sectionalism. Sectionalism means loyalty to your own section or region or state rather than the nation. The North and the South were already splitting based on their views on slavery. And up until this point, we had equal number of southern states and northern states, or free and slave states, within the Congress, so it was balanced. The fear was that one side would become unbalanced. One side would have more representatives than the other, and that would then lean the Congress toward supporting whether free or slave. So, for example, if the North gained more representatives and the scales tipped in favor of the North, the South feared that the North would then abolish slavery. Vice versa, if the South gained more representation than the North and the scales bumped into the favor of the South, the North feared that the South would spread slavery throughout the United States. So, the issue that arose during this time was Missouri applied for statehood as a slave state. Remember that the Northwest Ordinance had created a system in which you could petition for statehood when you had 60,000 people. So Missouri was ready, and they wanted to come in as a slave state. Well, this is going to upset the balance. It's going to make the slave states have more representatives than the northern states or the free states. And so there was a lot of uproar about it, and what ended up happening, the solution, was the Missouri Compromise of 1820. And this was created by Henry Clay. We'll hear about Henry Clay again. Henry Clay is known as a great compromiser for his work on several significant compromises in American history. But the Missouri Compromise did the following three things. First, it made Missouri a slave state, and at the same time admitted Maine, which used to be part of Massachusetts, as a free state. So this is going to keep the balance in Congress. We're going to add one slave and one free state. And then it said, in order to avoid this from happening in the future, we're going to draw the 3630 line, 3630 line across the part of the United States that we currently have, which would go all the way through Louisiana Territory, and all land, all territory above the 3630 line would be free. All territory below the 3630 line would then become slave. So north, free, south, slave. Okay, the last issue that Monroe dealt with as president was when he issued the Monroe Doctrine. The Monroe Doctrine is a statement issued to countries around the world warning them to stop trying to colonize in the Americas. This was especially going on in Latin and South America. European countries and other countries all over the world were trying to come into these Latin American and South America countries and take over or regain control. And because a lot of South American and Latin American countries had fought revolutions and gained their independence from their mother country. And so Monroe said, look, Canada, U.S., Mexico, Latin America, South America, all of the Americas, North and South, we don't want you coming in anymore. You need to stay out. So basically imagine him drawing a little invisible line around North and South America and putting up fake stop signs. This is all made up. Obviously they weren't actual stop signs. But putting up these stop signs and saying, don't cross this line. If you do, if you're coming down here to South America to start a new colony, we're going to meet you there and we're going to stop you. If we have to use force, we'll use force. I like to think of it as the United States playing big brother or big sister to the Latin American and South American countries. That was the Monroe Doctrine. It stopped European countries from coming in and colonizing within Latin or South America.